you ever tried to explain something really complicated to a 3-year-old? Well, a few years ago, I was sitting on my daughter's bed reading her a story one night, and she looked at me and she said, "Dad, what do you actually do at work all day?" What followed were perhaps some of the most uncomfortable moments of my life as I tried to justify my existence. Well, I meet with people to help them save money when they buy stuff so that they can make stuff so that we can buy stuff with the money I make working for them. It didn't matter how many zeros were involved, she wasn't buying it. And I went to bed that night thinking that something had to change in my life. Later that same year, Michael Porter and Mark Kramer published their paper on shared value in the Harvard Business Review. And as an economist, this had a profound effect on me. As here was a serious economic theory from a reputable global business school that said it was not only possible, but in fact essential, that businesses should make great profits while at the same time solving social problems. Businesses like Thank You Water, one of probably 100 bottled water brands you can choose from here in Australia today. The difference is when you buy a bottle of Thank You Water, the money goes overseas to fund water projects that change lives. 170,000 of them so far. But for me personally, shared value allowed me to reconcile a conflict that I'd been grappling with since I was a child. Because growing up in England, I'd had a privileged upbringing. My father was a successful businessman and he'd come home from work each night, and my mum, a volunteer, would go out to work for charity. On the weekends, we'd spend Saturdays drifting around in Dad's yacht and Sundays out raising money for Mum's charity. So I suppose you might say I was a TCK, or a third culture kid, growing up between the cultures of business and not-for-profit. Of course, it wasn't until much later in my life that I realised that through this somewhat paradoxical childhood, both my parents had been teaching me something important. That a business brain and a social conscience mattered. But increasingly in the world around me, I've been observing a disconnect. A widening gap between having and giving. On the one hand, as consumers, we're buying more and more stuff from bigger and bigger global companies with less and less understanding of the social impact our spending decisions are having around the world. On the other hand, we're giving more and more to charities and not-for-profits who are desperately trying to solve the very same problems that our spending is creating. It's insane, isn't it? I believe this makes us all global citizens. It doesn't matter where we were raised, where we were born, where we live, or where we work. When we spend money, it changes the world. For better or for worse. Well, shared value is about closing that gap. Having and giving with the same dollar. Spending not just for the stuff we can have, but for the impact we can have. Now that's a story I'm excited to tell my kids about the work I do and the way we spend our money. When they grow up, they won't need an economist to make sense of their lives. Because this is the world that we global citizens can create for them. And I, for one, am excited to be a part of it.